And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted, and I have the great pleasure to introduce Al Lerberg.
There
Thank
you
you very
go.
much for joining me today. Much appreciated. How are
Yeah.
you?
I'm fantastic, David, and thanks for having me today.
I think it's super topical to have you on the show today. You are a recruiter. You run a company for recruitment, specifically for cybersecurity. But before we jump in, to clean up palettes, maybe walk me through kind of memory lane, how you got to where you are today. Walk me through that journey.
Sure. In 2009, when we first got started, I looked at the landscape for what was happening in the economy. And what recruiters look for are macro shifts and things that are changing in the work world. And one of the things that was changing was cybersecurity at that time. It was more of a buzzword than a household name. You were starting to see news clippings, things about cybersecurity, but really at that time, when I talked to people about what I did, they were confused. They really didn't know how that worked into a business model or that a business even had a cybersecurity team. Remember, this is back in 2009. So again, it was just a buzzword. But anyway, recruiters want to go where there's a need, right? Where the clients need them the most. And at that time, cybersecurity was ramping up in the number of people that were working in the industry. So that's a place you wanted to be. So I started to do my research. I met with people, looked at industry trends, read as many articles as I could, went to as many conferences as I could to try to learn as much as I could about the field. And so that's how I got started. And literally immediately the demand started to come in, especially from defense contractors who needed cybersecurity skill sets on their teams. And so that's really where we got started, was in the defense space. That matured into working with Fortune 100, 500, and other companies in the private sector. And so now we have both the government practice and the private sector that we work with.
So Wayne Gretzky says that you have to skate to where the puck is going to be, not
Right.
where the puck is. And it sounds like you did just that. You had the foresight to research it right at the cusp of it going like a hockey stick, pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Go where the need is, right? And that's where the need not only was strong at that time, but I could also see the projections of where it was going to be needed in the future as well. So made sense to go into this space.
And why specialize? Why not recruit everything under the sun? What's so important about particular focus on this type of niche?
Yeah, and that's a great question. When you specialize in something, you can talk the talk, you understand the verbiage, you can be a better resource for those organizations than if I'm just a generalist and I try to be all things to all people. In fact, you hit on one of our frustrations, which is a lot of firms that were in just general IT recruiting have now morphed into cybersecurity. They just added cybersecurity. Oh, cybersecurity is the same. So we're just going to add that to our list of positions that we fill. They don't know the niche like we know this niche, right? They don't know GRC. They don't know operations. They don't know the executive levels of cybersecurity recruiting. It's a different language in a lot of ways from just general IT, or if you're taking anything away from DBAs or network administrators or any of those things. But in cybersecurity, it's a different verbiage, a different language, and a little bit of a different world.
So you have customers, two types of customers. One are the candidates and the other one are the companies.
Clients. Yep.
Yes. Do they realize the value of having somebody who specializes in this particular field?
Some. Yes, I would say the candidates for sure. So the professionals working in this space, they definitely appreciate having. I get that all the time when we're qualifying professionals for a role. They're like, "Wow, okay, you understand our space." They don't have to dumb it down for us, right? So we can speak the language. The clients, I don't think have gotten there yet. I think that's still a work in progress, especially when the company is bigger and they have to work through like an HR team, right? That might say IT's IT, and that's part of IT. So we'll use whoever our master agreement is with our IT provider, right? And that's been one of our struggles, is to tell them that there is a difference and to explain what that difference is.
Now, we're providing you a platform to do just that. Hopefully,
Thank
those
you.
who are
Appreciate it.
watching, and I concur. I don't always agree, but I concur in this particular case. There's something to be said about being specialized,
Mhm.
just to understand that the differences, and there's sometimes the very subtle differences between the knowledge base and the experience for somebody in a particular role. And
Yeah.
if you don't understand what that is, you may waste everybody's time. They're looking for a particular candidate with a particular skill set. You have to know the underlying responsibilities and what the job really entails and what the candidate qualifications are. And you can't really understand because it's complex
Yeah.
unless you come from that background. So talk to me about building the practice, like the first couple times that mentioned, okay, you decided that this is the route you want to take for
Mhm.
cybersecurity. Remember like the early days, like
Yep.
talking to candidates, how did you find clients? And then in particular, you are like the GUI center, if you say, in the job market between specialized skill set and then the clients looking for these sets.
Yeah. So I see ourselves as a conduit of information, right? We're a conduit between the professionals who are in the field who might be looking for a new opportunity, and we're a conduit between the company who then is looking for that talent, right? So my job is to bring those two parties together to see if there's a good fit between the two parties. So you said, how did we grow the practice? It really started off with they needed architects and engineers in mostly on the operations side, right? And then they said, if you do that, can you also do GRC? So then we had to learn, okay, what's regulation, governance, and compliance? All right. So what do those professionals do? How do we learn their field? And then it changed as the industry began to mature. They were started to look for different things, right? Which makes sense. Now they wanted identity and access management professionals. All right. How does that fit into an overall cybersecurity team structure and what the organization is trying to do? Then zero trust became really big and they wanted zero trust professionals. And then it was cloud security, right? And security architects, DevSecOps became big, right? So as these new trends came along, I don't want to say it was simple, but it was easier because we already had the foundation of how a cybersecurity team is built. And then these were the different parts or the different pieces that were being bolted on to this organization that already existed. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then I would say that over time, you build a roster of both the client side looking to fill the talent and the talent itself, because the people are moving. So you might place somebody at a company and then 2 years go by or 18 months go by and they're looking for another role and they've had a good experience with you and your firm.
Exactly. And it's all about how you did on your last search, right? So you're only as good as the last search that you conducted for that organization. So in other words, if we can't find talent for a position, or if it takes too long for us to find that talent, sometimes the client will look elsewhere or for another resource to help fill that role.
It reminds me of a little bit of the real estate industry, meaning that there's just a lot of real estate agents, but only a few good ones.
There's a lot of truth
And
in that.
and the same goes for recruitment because the barriers to entry are relatively speaking low.
They are.
You just need a kind of a phone, maybe a database, maybe a LinkedIn profile, and then they can potentially just go out and look for candidates and look for companies that are hiring. Yet there are quite a few challenges of building that practice over time. And it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of recruiting agents that started and then never get to the point where they're profitable and can see this as a long-term endeavor. Talk to me about what makes you unique in the sense that we're successful doing this.
Yeah. I think the hardest challenge is what you just described, David, which is how do you separate yourself from the masses of recruiting firms, especially in the IT space, right? And I'd hinted at that earlier. So really separating yourself is probably the biggest challenge. It's something that, to be quite honest with you, David, it's something that we work on all the time. What separates us, not only in how we work with our clients, but what the product offering is. So one of the key differentiators is our contract staffing offering. We have a very large company that backs us. It's People 2.0 that we use for the payroll processing as well as the benefits administration. The great thing with working with somebody like a $1.2 billion company like People 2.0 is your payroll is going to be done automatically every single week. So when we bring on a contractor, they're going to get paid, that there's a process to follow every single week for submitting your time. So that's probably one of the biggest key differences. And then when it comes down to just specifically cybersecurity, when you've been in the space since 2009, you've seen all the trends, right? You've helped build companies, helped build their security organizations. You get to know those organizations and how they operate. And you also get to know who fits best with that organization when you're making those qualifying calls, so that you have less strikes when you're sending in professionals to work there. You get more hits, right? So that's probably the biggest key, is the length in the market. When you've been doing it as long as you have, then you have the product that's different, a little bit different, in that we can provide contract staffing as well as perm placement.
And it's so interesting because the market itself has really changed as well, in the sense that it seems like everybody wants to get a chunk of that recruitment piece. So LinkedIn is pushing for it. There's all these websites. So you are essentially a boutique firm specializing in particular roles, but yet you are, and I don't know if you are competing against the online presence. And
Absolutely.
I would ask, what is the real value? If somebody says, why would I use a recruiter? And I'm assuming some firms, I've even seen like some firms saying no recruitment, we're not working with recruiting. Talk to me about the dynamics there.
Yeah. So a lot of times when you see that, companies have had bad experiences. They work with a general IT firm. So they got, let's say, 7 or 8 resumes, and none of the resumes were even close to what they were looking for. And so a lot of what we do is, the work that we do is on the front end of qualifying a job order. When I say qualifying a job order, we're qualifying the client's position or opportunity as much as we're going to qualify the professionals for that opportunity, right? To make sure that it's a good fit or a good opportunity. So a lot of that work that we do on the front end pays off on the back end. In other words, we provide higher quality candidates, so that when a company gets resumes from us, those 3 resumes or those 3 professionals are going to hit the mark because we did the work on the front end of qualifying the job order correctly. If you don't do that and you just take a job order, in fact, my partner and I were just talking about this recently, there's a big national contract that we would love to fill they have over 600 openings with this Fortune 500 company. We would love to help them fill those openings, but we asked what the process was. The process is, this vendor management company sends out a generic job order, and then we're supposed to go work on it. We don't know anything about the company. We don't know anything about the personality of the hiring manager. We don't know anything about the personality of the team. The job order is going to be very generic. It's not going to tell us all the things that we need to know to find the right person, the successful fit for that organization. So the secret sauce, if you will, is in that job qualification, meeting that hiring manager, fully understanding what they're looking for, then going to market, because then I'm not wasting the time of the hiring manager sending candidates that aren't a good fit. And I'm also not wasting the time of the candidate talking to them about an opportunity that I can't tell them anything about the company. I don't know if they're going to be a good fit or not, if it's just a generic job description. So really it comes down to that, having really good questions, which I have found you can only develop over time, and asking a lot of dumb ones to get to the good ones, and developing a good job qualification form that you can then use when you're meeting with the hiring managers, so that when I submit those 3 candidates, those are going to be 3 candidates that are going to hit the ground running for that organization. And the candidates are going to be happier because I know I'm a better fit for this opportunity than if I was just generically plucked out of the sky for this opportunity.
So it sounds like you were not, in this particular case, you were not set for success. From the client perspective, the client wasn't in particular enough in terms of what they were looking for, and did not provide you the tools, or potentially provide you the ability to filter those candidates for the position they wanted.
Correct. I think, and I get it, right? If I'm a cybersecurity, let's say I'm a director, right? Or I'm a manager. My skill set is not being a recruiter, right? But so many of them are out on LinkedIn. It's just amazing to me. And they want to do my job. I don't know why they want to do my job so bad, but they do. right? And they're just putting out this generic job description, and then they're getting waves of candidates that they're going to then have to sort through all of these profiles to find the right one. And a lot of times when they do that, maybe they have friends and they're hoping their friends respond to them. And I get that's how we build networks. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why we go to a specialist if they're going to be our lawyer, right? We go to a specialist lawyer who specializes in that case law, right? Because we want that specialist working for us. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to have a recruiter doing the same thing. It saves time and money at the end of the day. Because if they're being a recruiter, then they're going to have to do all the stuff that I'm doing that takes time and money to do, right? And then the cost of finding the wrong person is extremely, there's been study after study done on that. I don't have the number in the top of my head, but there's been several studies that have been done at the cost of the missed opportunity cost when somebody doesn't work out after, let's say 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever that time frame is. So why wouldn't you want to have your best shot at finding that resource that's going to stay there 2, 3, who knows, 10 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Makes total sense. And you basically described the opportunity cost of not putting in the right candidates and the process, how long it takes and so on. So paying whatever the amount is to recruitment is actually minuscule compared to the chances of hiring the wrong person or how long it takes. And then the time it takes as well for these individuals that are
definitely
job descriptions.
And companies will often look at the Apple car recently. I don't even know how many billions of dollars they spent on that initiative, right? That they're not even going to move forward with. So put your money towards the people. That's your most valuable resource you have with an organization. Anybody that could help me find really great people that are going to do a fantastic job for my company, I would say that's where I want to invest my time and resources and my money.
So let's talk about specifically about the best practice, right? So I'm a company, I'm a client, I'm listening to this podcast and I say, I'll make sense. Why are we doing things the way we're doing? It makes no sense financially. It's not contribute to our success of our business. How do I engage with your company? What is the best practice to make the most out of this engagement and to know that you're getting the best chance of success and so am I?
Yeah, just invest a little bit of time, reach out obviously, but invest a little bit of time in that job discovery phase where we're qualifying the job or telling us what you're looking for, who's going to best fit with your team. Probably just that investment of 30 minutes will pay off huge dividends on the back end when you're getting those resumes from us on the professionals that we found for the opportunity. So it's pretty easy on how to find us, right? We're not hidden. It's in the name, Cybersecurity Recruiters, right? So that part of it's easy, but yeah, just investing the time. I think the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge is really the contractual process. I think a lot of people are afraid that contract process can be long, lengthy, a lot of legal speak, a lot of legal jargon that goes, it's not. Our agreements are straightforward. They're 1 page long. We'll make it as simple as you want to do business with us, to be quite honest with you. And we're flexible on setting up the fee agreement and how you want to structure that. We're very flexible in all those areas. So I think that there's this perception that, we have to go through our procurement group and our procurement group will take months to get back to us to put something in place. We're not hard to work with. But hey, there are some staffing firms, by the way, I've seen some contracts that are over 10 pages long. Ours is 1 page, right? But I think there's this perception that the procurement process can take a very long time and it's very challenging to get something in place. And that's probably from their experience of working with other staffing firms, to be quite honest with you.
And aside from working with your firm, I wanted to focus on specifically about the job description and the candidate they're looking for. I had a chance to talk to a very senior CISO and they mentioned that currently they're looking for a position and they're seeing that some of the job postings, they're like looking for unicorns. And meaning that the job requirements are unrealistic. They want complete list of almost like conflicting skill sets and conflicting attributes. And they also want the person to be living within the 5-mile radius from the HQ, which also remind me of back in the day where they were saying, I'm a million unfulfilled IT jobs or cybersecurity jobs. And then you look at the job descriptions and they're like 15 years of Java, where Java was only around for 5.
For 5, yeah.
And then they also wanted somebody with degrees. They wanted somebody to do shift work. They wanted somebody to be able to lift 100 pounds worth of equipment. And they want all of that for $15 an hour.
Yep.
So that person does not exist.
Yep.
And yet the company says, oh, we can't find anybody. Well, you can't find anybody. And it's all a matter of how much you're willing to pay. You can't find anybody because you're not willing to pay. And your expectations are completely out of whack. Sorry for this short rant.
No,
Tell me if you concur with that, or you have another. And how do you? Again, it's one thing to declare a problem, but how do we solve it?
Sure. And we call it the 20-20-20 rule. They want a 20-year-old with 20 years experience for $20,000 a year. So here's what we do.
Al. Can we do a T-shirt?
Yeah,
right. I think it's trademarked. This is brilliant.
20-20-20. So what we do when we get that type of job description or job order is what we call it. When we get that, we go through that with the hiring manager and we go, okay, you've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at this. And I get it. You want somebody that does everything for your organization, but let's narrow it down to the top 3 skill sets that this person must have. And if they have those 3 skill sets, will you say yes to interviewing them? And then we want them obviously to say yes. If they don't say yes at that point, then we've got to backtrack and we have a problem, right? We got to talk about what are the required skill sets here, because this person that you've described, what we call the purple unicorn, they don't exist. Purple squirrel, whatever you want to call them. So this person doesn't exist. So let's find a real human being. Let's not find whatever we've drawn up on this piece of paper to justify someone's pay grade here, right? So, and by the way, that's what a lot of times what a job description is used for, is to justify a pay grade within the organization. Okay. So that's why they put a lot of skill sets on there that necessarily they might not even actually need for this position, but I've got to justify the pay grade. So I'm going to put it on the job description so it gets through our procurement group or our HR group, right? So anyway, that's why you see that. But it's a simple conversation with the hiring manager. And 9 times out of 10, the hiring manager goes, yeah, I don't need all that. I just need these 3 things. But if they do say we do need all that, and that person realistically, as you described in the Java role, if that doesn't exist, then we just have to say we have to walk away. We can't work on this because I can't go to market and find someone that doesn't exist. So we got to work in reality here, right?
Yes.
That's a hard conversation to have, but.
And the role entails hard conversations. I think that you have to have hard conversation with the candidate as well as the client.
Sure.
It's not an easy role. You are dealing with people, especially on the candidate side, that are sometimes, depending on what stage you're in, it's one of the most stressful places to be. I think it's death and birth, and then change of address, and then moving, and then also changing jobs. One of the most stressful things to do in life.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with people and sometimes at the lowest point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotional tensions.
For sure. And Dave, let me jump in real quick there. The hardest thing for me to do in my career is finding a really good professional that I think, based on everything that the hiring manager described, everything that I know about the organization, I think is going to be a home run. And they go through multiple interviews, and then at some stage, the company says, they're just not a good fit. And to go back to that person that's invested that time and all that energy into interviewing and really liking who they're meeting with and want to be part of that organization, and telling them that they're not moving forward in the process, that's the worst part of our job, quite honestly. I hate it. I wish I could get rid of that part of our job, but it is what it is.
And let's face it, there's a lot of things that you described that have almost nothing to do with the actual qualifications, okay? And I want to uncover some of that. It can be something as simple as, in a group of setting, one person doesn't like you because you said one little thing, or
especially today,
you don't like you because of the way you look, or they just have one of their friends as a candidate, one of their cousins, and they're specifically looking to get that. And sometimes we've seen jobs that are almost described for as particular individuals that they want to hire, and yet they're going to waste everybody's time. They know that the hiring manager knows that he's looking for the particular individual, but they have to go through the motions.
Yep.
So talk to me about that piece, because I see you're passionate about making the right choices, and you're passionate about what you do, and you're passionate about getting the right candidates to the right companies. And yet sometimes there are things that are beyond your control.
Yeah. And by the way, pretty much every scenario you described in my 15-year career has happened. It's happened at least once.
And Al, I'm not a recruiter. I just talk to people.
Yeah. And we try to avoid that, obviously, to save us the pain as well as the professional. But every single one of those scenarios has happened. I don't think there's any certain way to avoid that we try to qualify the job order as best we can on the front end. We hope that everyone we work with is being upfront and honest with us. And to be honest with you, 90% of the time they have been. But you're right. Every once in a while, there's an agenda behind the agenda that we're not privy to. And we try to figure out when those scenarios present themselves to gracefully step away and not get involved in that. But it's realistically, it happens, right? It is what it is.
Yeah. And sometimes you see companies posting jobs which they have no intention of filling. They're just, I think it's maybe just to show that they're doing well. Who knows? Some of them are even collecting, I think they're just collecting resumes for future potential hiring. Maybe they have an HR department that's their role to collect candidates. I mean, there's all kinds of different nuances here in terms of why they have the job posting. And sometimes it's not because they're looking for a candidate.
Yeah. And they could have a posting that was posted and then there's a hiring freeze, but they left that post up. You submit your resume into their website and boom, it doesn't go anywhere. You wonder why it's not going anywhere. Well, it's not going anywhere because they never pulled it down from their website. And you're right. They're probably resume harvesting. So when that position opens back up, they can maybe sort through those. But again, and to be honest with you, that's why it's beneficial to work with a recruiter, because typically we've qualified that job order on the front end to make sure that it's a legit job order, that there's a good chance that this position exists, because we don't want to work on it if it's fake like that. So obviously I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my team's time. I don't want to waste the company that I'm working with's time. And we quickly find that out. I don't want to go into specifics, but this just happened recently where we qualified the job order. We submitted candidates within, by the way, 3 days of receiving that job order. We submitted really good candidates and they came back to us and said, oh, we had already engaged a consulting firm before we called you, and they had sent in some resumes and we're going to move forward with their candidate. And now I've got 3 candidates I've got to call back and I got to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, you're not moving. And these candidates were really excited about this opportunity. And you know what? I know for a fact, David, that these 3 candidates were better than whoever they got from the consulting firm. I guarantee it. I guarantee, because I hit the mark on exactly the job description. Boom, everything we qualified in the job order. When we talked to the hiring manager, every one of them I could check the box. So yeah, it happens. It's the world we live in.
Yeah. And there's some horror stories of people. And I know that from just talking to individuals who accepted a position, they were about to start, and then that job was eliminated. They already accepted it. The job was eliminated. And then the hiring manager was eliminated too. So whoever was doing the hiring was eliminated too. And they already quit their previous position and they were between a rock and a hard place because they haven't really started the new position. So there's a lot of little craziness going on in this particular process, right?
Yeah. And David, one of the things we talk to our clients about that we think is really important is brand management, right? Your company name and even your name as a hiring manager is a brand, right? To some extent. When you do that and you basically screw that person over, to use strong language, that person's going to tell 100 people.
Strong and professional language.
Yeah. That person's going to tell 100 more people. And and next time I get a job order from you, do you think I'm going to jump on that thing? So here's the difference. Here's what I would love to tell clients. Okay. The clients that tell me, Al, you're 100% responsible for filling this role. I trust you and I'm counting on you to fill this role. David, I'm going to clear my desk and I am going to bust my tail to get that position and get 3 candidates in front of that person as quickly as possible, right? Because let's be honest, it means it's a paycheck at the end of the day and I'm not working for free, okay? So I'm excited about that and I am going to go to market with enthusiasm about your organization, about you, because I probably qualified you, I worked with you, and you're saying, hey, look, I trust you. But if you come to me as a client, you say, hey, Al, you know what? We'll use you, but I've also reached out to 4 other staffing firms who are in general IT staffing just to see whoever can get me a resume fastest. Who do you think I'm going to gravitate first? The client that says, Al, I trust you and I really want you to fill this position and I'm trusting you to get it done? Or do you think I'm going to work with the one that says, I'm working with 6 other people? It's like you're dating, right? And they said, hey, I'm going to date you, but I'm also going to date these other 6 people just to see who's the best fit for me. You're going to be like, see ya, right? Or you're going to put very little time into that. So the message I would love to get out to clients is pick someone that's really good in their space, that knows the niche, and trust them to fill your role and work with them. And if they can't, it's not like you can't go somewhere else after a couple of weeks. You're out 2 weeks, right? But work with that person. Say, I trust you. Find me great people for this opportunity, and we will go to market and we will sell the hell out of that. But directors that are, or hiring managers that did what, or do what you're talking about in your previous scenario, that's tough, because now your brand in the marketplace has got egg on it. That's going to be a hard sell for any recruiter to go in and try to sell that a year from now, even, because of it's not hard to go onto websites these days and put in how you really feel about an organization, right? You know, X,
Absolutely.
you go out there and put in your 2 cents on X, right? So yeah, I mean, you got to protect that. I would want to. I want people to say nice things about our organization, and that's not a good scenario.
Yeah, and the reputation goes a long way. And I would say also how it starts is how it ends. If the process of recruitment and working with that company is, for the lack of a better term, is just sucks, whoever you're going to place in there will most likely will not have a great time working for that firm. I think there's a certain DNA for a firm, a certain reputation, and in the group of individuals who actually work there, they're part of the organization. And then the DNA for that, if they're dealing with the recruitment firm a certain way and the candidates a certain way, I can't imagine that after you get the landed position, there's going to be smooth sailing and it's going to be a rosy ride.
Yeah. And it's the real world, right? Nothing is going to be, but the best companies we work with, when the hiring manager does the interview, it's 50% qualifying the professional and it's 50% selling the organization to that individual. Those are the best companies we work with. The absolute worst companies or hiring managers we work with, they are constantly challenging and qualifying the person through the entire call. And all it is it seems like it's some type of test that they have to pass versus a conversation, right? And they're like grilling them. And then after the conversation, it's usually, well, now you have to take our assessment to see if you're worthy to work here, right? No, you got to sell your organization. You got to sell why, especially in a marketplace that's been like cybersecurity, where it's been tight to find talent for over a decade, right? Sell your organization, sell you on what you're building within your team or what individual project you're working on and why that's exciting. That's the one thing that I see missing within this field more than probably any other, is that this is a highly technical field, obviously, right? Most of the positions we fill are highly technical roles, but get better at selling yourself and selling your organization to somebody. So many times I've listened to these interviews and they're just droning on about qualifying. Are you qualified? But they never flip the switch to, this is why you want to work for us. And then also the best organizations, not only do they sell the individual, but then they have an onboarding plan too, right? So they're emailing them. They're saying, hey, really excited to have you start on Tuesday. Here's our onboarding process. Boom, boom. Now I'm getting the impression I'm working with somebody that I want to stay with for a long time, because they're doing some pretty neat things and they're organized and they've got a process that they're following for onboarding individuals, right? So those are the best companies we work with. And I would highly recommend, even if you are a highly technical hiring manager, if that's your personality, I get it. And even if you're introverted, work on flipping that switch to selling yourself and your organization and why somebody should want to work for your team, for your company, for your project, because those people are going to become evangelists. They're going to go out and sell your organization for you.
For sure. And it's also how you make them feel throughout the process. I can't tell you, if somebody has a terrible experience getting hired, again, what's going to happen is it's just like when a customer, right? The customer is the vendor, for example, has the power before the customer signs. It's actually the other way around. The customer has more power, but as soon as the customer signs the contract, the vendor now has the power because they have to deliver. And so sometimes you get to such a bitter taste where the vendor is, oh my God, this customer made me go through the ringer, and yes, I got the transaction, but guess what? I'm now, the salesperson, whoever deals with them, and now you already bought. So now I'm not going to be as responsive. And I would say that same is true if you go through a hellish hiring process. The odds are you're getting hired and you're not as, I would say, motivated to do a great job. You're like, oh my God, maybe as soon as you get that job, you're looking for another one.
Yeah.
I'm not staying here. I got this because I have to, but I'm not staying here. I'm going to spend, now I'm more relaxed. I have the 6 months to look for the next role.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm not staying here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes right back to brand management and why we talk to our clients about, hey, even if the person doesn't get the job, right? You still want them to walk away saying that was a great experience talking to that hiring manager. And I've had that with certain organizations we've worked with. The candidates have said, hey, Al, I know I didn't get chosen for this role, but I really enjoyed talking to them. They're doing some really neat stuff. If they have another opening that becomes available, please let me know about it. I'd love to interview for it. That has happened, and that person has come back and gotten the job. If they didn't get it the first time they came back, we brought them back for a similar opportunity or even the same opportunity, right? Especially if it's like a SOC analyst role or something like that. But the bottom line is they had a great conversation and a great experience with that hiring manager. That hiring manager sold them on the organization and what they were trying to do. And even though that hiring manager didn't pick, that person was so excited about working for the company, they onboarded with them, let's say 6 weeks later, 6 months later even. Yeah, that's really important and then that person, of course, is going out and telling their friends, man, I didn't get it, but that was a really cool company. They're doing some really neat stuff. I want to be part of that. Or that hiring manager, that's somebody I want to work for. And the number one reason, what's the number one reason, David, that people quit their jobs? It's not the company. It's not the product. It's the person they work for. It's their manager, their direct report. That's the most important part of that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very important because it gives you an opportunity for the company to evangelize what it is that they do. And there's no other time where you sit one-on-one with a person and you make them feel that what it is that you do as a company and as individual matters.
Yeah.
There's no other time. And you're right.
Yeah.
That feeling goes a long way. And then potentially to increase the brand awareness of the company and allow for them to hire better candidates along the way.
Absolutely.
So Al, I wanted to make sure that we talked about this side of the house, the client side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it's really important that we talk about the other side of dating. Right? We need two for tango, right? The candidates themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the do and don't, like the best practices, because I think people are, again, they're not aware that, first of all, they may have bad experiences dealing with other recruiters.
Sure.
They may have encountered some issues. And frankly, there's no school that teaches you how to deal with some people. It's the first time. We never dealt with recruitment. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up. So one of the first things, there's a misconception out there that recruiters help people who want to get into the industry get into the industry. We don't do that. I get those calls every week, all the time. Hey, I'm looking to get into cybersecurity. That's not what recruiters do. I wish I got paid for that. If I did, I'd own an island somewhere.
Al, you should refer them to my podcast. I interview a lot of professionals. First and foremost, that what they need to do is to gather knowledge and understand. And I cover with individuals the journey of how they got into cybersecurity. I would say one of the first things hey, listen to David.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you said it. I will point them in your direction. But I get a lot of those calls. So the truth is, when companies call us, what they're looking for are experienced professionals, right? Because they can find people that want to get into the industry on their own. They're not going to pay any recruiter for that. All right. And they have internal recruiters that find people that want to get into the industry that are sending in their resumes. That's what internal recruiters do really well. Okay. What we do really well is find the person that's got 7 years experience working in Splunk, has several Splunk certifications at the enterprise level, and can come in and make an immediate impact with your organization. That's what recruiters do. So I just want to clear up that misperception that we somehow bring people into the industry and place brand new people into companies. Again, wish I could do it.
And then
just
people
don't do that.
I would also add to that you're a nice guy, but you run a business. And even though, and we have we'll talk about some of that knowledge and base in terms of how to get to become this valuable candidate you like to work with, because you have insight to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you're running a business, and therefore the fact that you turn these people away is not because you're a bad guy, you're not helpful, you don't want to give back. It's just that you're running a business.
Exactly. And what I do is I point those people every single time. I said, make as many connections as you can on LinkedIn. Now I'll point them to you, David. But I send them to LinkedIn. I said, make connections with people that are in your industry, that are working for companies that you want to work for, that you're interested in. If you want to be a pen tester, that's great. But go connect with pen testers so that you can talk to them. They're going to let you know if they have opportunities at their company. The chances of me getting you in the door are minuscule compared to someone like that. That's going to be very powerful for you. So I share that with, I have that conversation probably 10 times a week, to be honest with you. So on the candidate side though, let me get back to you. You brought something up that the candidate experience itself. For candidates, resumes are great, but they're not. The interview is what's going to sell you on the opportunity, not just sell you, but it's going to sell them you. That's horrible English, but anyway, it's going to sell them on you.
Listen, you're not an English professor, you're a recruiter.
That's great. Thank God. But anyway, the interview itself is something that people can really work on. The resume gets you in the door. Okay. Yep. They check the boxes. They've got the experience. Okay. I can see their LinkedIn profile. Boom. They've got the right experience. But the interview is the critical stage. The interview is where they find out whether you're the right fit for the organization. Okay, so let's talk about how to interview, because I've heard some really good interviews and I've heard some really bad interviews. And by the way, we listen to a lot of interviews. We like to be involved in that process. So a lot of times we can stay on the line to answer any questions, or if there's a problem that comes up technically, obviously, with the interview, we can get people reconnected. So a lot of times we'll stay on. But anyway, so we listen to a lot of interviews. The interview phase, or the interview part, it's part listening, part asking questions, part listening, part talking. And what a lot of people do is they'll go down, especially in this field, they'll go down a rabbit hole, a technical rabbit hole. And where the hiring manager is looking for a high level, yeah, we've done that. Here were our problems implementing that solution, but we overcame it by doing this, but keep it high level. A lot of times what we hear in the interview process is they'll dive deep into a technical issue and they'll go really deep and they'll talk about it for a half hour. And the interview won't even have time to get to anything else, because all they're doing is talking about this deep dive area that the person's really interested in. But man, I can literally see the hiring manager like nodding their head and falling asleep during the conversation. So when you interview, realize that they're looking for more high level. Yes, we've done that. Here's what we ran into. Here's how we solved that problem. We could do the same thing for you. That's really what they're looking for. So practice that. Have that conversation with, even if you don't have someone to talk to, someone like a spouse or something, even if you have a mirror, practice having that conversation and become good at interviewing, because that's the key to you either not getting or not getting that opportunity. Because again, if you're having the conversation, you're probably qualified. You probably have the skill sets. It's coming down to, are you a culture fit? And what's your depth of expertise in that area? But again, I would warn you when I say depth, I caution using that word, because don't go too far down the rabbit hole in one specific area. Just keep it high level. Unless they ask you to, then you can dive into it all you want. But a lot of times they don't ask and they go down there anyway.
And that was impactful. I think you deserve like about 10 seconds of silence. Just let it sink in. No, but also seriousness, it's part of the things you don't learn. It's the soft skills that are hard, sometimes for people who are technical. And talk to me about the practice. You mentioned practice makes perfect, like anything.
Yep.
And a lot of times, like how many chances do you have to actually get into job interviews? Thankfully, not a lot. Sometimes people do that once every year, once every 5 years, whatever the case may be. And so you can't blame them for not being as proficient.
No, absolutely not.
And then the mirror doesn't talk back. And then
Yeah.
if you do it with your relative or your significant other, they're not as critical. They're not going to tell you stop, like you're going through I'm not interested. Stop right there. Tell me about yourself.
Yep. Yeah. It's just like this, David, right? It's having a conversation. Those are the best interviews. Also, think in your head, what are they trying to accomplish? What problem are they trying to solve? A lot of times I get people that will read off their resume, okay, but they never figured out that I did this, I did this. Okay, luckily you might have hit on one of those points that problems they're trying to solve was one of those areas that you talked about when you were talking about yourself. But more importantly, ask the hiring manager, tell me about your team. Tell me about what you've got going on. Why are you making this hire? What problem are you trying to solve by hiring me for this opportunity? Hey, we're implementing Splunk. And by the way, you would think that a hiring manager would just have this out there, or at least to say, hey, we're hiring you because we're fixing a Splunk problem. We're implementing Splunk and we're having these issues. They don't do that though, do they? They say, tell me about yourself, David. And then you go on for 20 minutes and then they go, okay, tell me more about what you've done in this area. And they never let the person into what they're actually trying to accomplish, which is I'm trying to hire somebody to fix my damn Splunk problem at the end of the day.
Again, because they might not do this on a regular basis.
Exactly.
So it's like
exactly
the blind leading the blind.
It's the blind leading the blind. That's a great way to put it. Exactly correct. What they should do, if I'm a professional, and I like to call them professionals and not candidates, because candidates to me sounds like I'm in line at the Army Recruiting Center. No, nothing against the Army.
Can a candidate prepare their own questions? Say, listen, if you don't mind, I would like to, I know you didn't ask this question, but maybe I prepared a couple questions for you to make their life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can even work it in a natural conversation. Tell me about yourself. Hey, I would love to tell you all about my experience, but is there a specific area that you are looking, or problem that you're trying to solve, or a specific expertise that you're looking for, so I can zero in on that on my resume?
It's easier said than done sometimes. Sometimes you're so stressed out. You just want to do a good job, and because you're in a position where you're not familiar with that, so you can't really stop for a second. That's why practice is so important. And I think there's some people that are doing this on a regular basis, unfortunately, become better and better in the hiring process.
You're 100% correct. And that's hopefully why we're doing this today, is it'll help them so they can add these things to their quiver, right? Their tool sets.
Yeah. And then are there particular ways to answer questions? And sometimes the only thing that comes to mind, for example, is somebody's asked, oh, tell me your strengths and weaknesses. All weird questions like that. And then you come on the weakness side and you say, I think I'm like too much of an overachiever, perfectionist. You pick like weird stuff like that is, I'm OCD. I'm like, I do a job like way too well to what it entails.
Yeah. I interviewed with a pharmaceutical company. This is a long time ago, and I went through a lot of interviews and pharmaceutical companies do a very good job in their interviewing process. Typically, the best interview I ever had is they said, give me an example of a time that you failed. I liked that question. I was like, how many examples do you want? I had lots, but I like that because it shows that the person, and you should be able to think of that pretty quickly. Right? There are lots of opportunities where I have not done.
I would just get up for a second and just like about to leave, make a move here. Yeah, where do you want me to start?
So I wish more hiring managers incorporated that type of question into their interview process. I think personally, it loosens me up. I relax when I get that type of question because I can be like, how many examples do you want? But anyway, so hiring managers can do a better job on that end, making the candidate feel more comfortable as well, the professional that they're interviewing more comfortable as well. But on the professional side, absolutely have prepared a couple of questions that get to why that organization is looking to hire for that opportunity. There's a reason why they're hiring. They're not just hiring because they're a charity and they want to give people money. They're hiring because there's a problem that they're trying to solve within their group or within their organization. The better a professional can get their arms around whatever that problem is they're trying to solve, the quicker they're going to go to the top of the list, as long as they have the expertise solving that type of problem. And if they can tell a story around how they solved that problem in the past for an organization of similar size or makeup, that person, again, goes right to the top of the list. That's the guy or the gal that we want for that opportunity.
Yeah, and stories sell. People remember stories.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I would say also, people remember how you make them feel. So it's not about what you say, it's about how you make them feel. And there's certain magic about a successful interview where there's almost like a mesh well. It's almost like a dance, right? You know, you both move in the rhythm.
It's exactly what it is. Liken it to dating. I'm getting to know you. You're getting to know me. Are we going to be a good fit? If it is, great.
And there's a certain magic behind it.
Yeah.
Is it something that you know right up front in the first 5 minutes, or can you like after half an hour, or there's a certain turning point where you know that both of you relax and both of you hit that rhythm and both of you are like, yeah, that's the right fit?
Yeah.
Love at first sight, or is it like love at second?
Sometimes, I would say sometimes, but I would say those first 5 minutes are very critical. But with that said, especially if it's a highly technical role and you've got to get into it a little bit before they get a good feel for if they have the technical skill sets and whether they'd be a good fit, I would say there's most conversations have a flow, right? First, it's the technical, oh, can you do this? And then it's the getting to know you a little bit towards the end. Are you a good cultural fit for our team and our organization? That's just as equally as important as the skill sets, right? They don't want, a lot of times what they just don't want is somebody that's going to come in and blow up whatever they've built. So if I've got a team of 4 or 5 top operators and they're just doing a great job, I definitely don't want to bring a 5th person in that's going to blow up this great team that they're getting along great. They're doing great things. And then I got a person that comes in and ruins all that. So a lot of times they're just looking for that fit. Are you going to come in and be able to maneuver into that group and be able to play nice in the sandbox is what I call it. Yeah.
What about the stories
important.
of you're in the process of getting hired for a senior position and somebody sends out, you're like flying out finally to meet the company or whatever, and somebody picks you up from the airport. And so you don't know it, but you're being interviewed by the cab driver. So it's part of the interview to see how you deal with it. Or you go out to lunch with somebody who was unrelated and they give some feedback.
Yep.
Does this really happen, or those are like urban myths?
I've read those stories as well. It's at like IBM or was it Google is famous for doing stuff like that. My rule of thumb is be polite and be generous and kind to every single person that you meet within that organization. You should be that way anyway, but within that organization, especially because you do not know what influence that person has. And I learned that lesson as a young man in the business world where I had become flippant with somebody who was scheduling us to go on a business trip. And I thought it was funny. She didn't. And she brought it to the attention of the boss. And it quickly became my issue that I had to fix. So yeah, you definitely, I pretty much feel like I've stepped on every landmine, David, before I started this job. But anyway, that said, no, it's really important that you are, again, kind and generous with everyone that you're running into, and that's important. But most of the interviews now, David, to be quite honest with you, are Microsoft Teams interviews. It's a lot like this format. A lot of the positions we work on, probably about 50% are still work from home roles. In this situation, that you don't run into that as much. But yeah, if you're going to work on site, 100% for sure.
Yeah, so there's less chances to be kind, but you should be kind anyway, as you
Yes.
mentioned. And I think there's a rule of thumb whether you're looking for a job or not.
Yeah. Arrogance. It's interesting. I've seen since 2009 to now, I've seen not only this industry mature, but I've also seen the professionals that I work with in this space mature. The demand was so high for a while, I'd say the first 5 years, that we'd run into some pretty arrogant people in this space, to be quite honest with you. Oh, nobody else has the skill sets we do. Well, yeah, we just found 3 other people that do exactly what you do. So I'm pretty sure there's the skill sets out there. But anyway, that has gone away. Those people have been, either they've matured or they're no longer working in the space. So happily, I can report that the professionals we work with now are gracious and they're appreciative and they enjoy their work. So that's been nice to see. And it's also interesting that the space itself has matured, right? Cybersecurity was so new back in 2009. Now we're seeing, unfortunately, offshoring of some roles, but we're also seeing the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and some of those other things that are changing the industry. So yeah, it's interesting how the industry and people have evolved.
Yeah, and we all have to evolve with it. You
Yeah,
can't stay,
for sure.
you have to upgrade your skill set. We talk about it. So let's talk about, since you brought it up, and I want to hit up on these points before we wrap up. And it's been
Mhm.
unbelievable interview. This was phenomenal, this podcast, I'm sure
Yeah,
for
I've
the
enjoyed
audience
it.
as well. Talk to me about what's going on now. Let's fast forward to 2024. It seems like the tech has been impacted by tightening of the economic conditions. So you have some AI, some capabilities, maybe over hiring during the pandemic, unrealistic expectations. So there's a lot of things that are in play right now. Talk to me about the environment right now for hiring, and then potentially for what candidates can do to make themselves shine and be more attractive to hiring managers.
Yeah, good question. So let's talk about the macro environment a little bit. In 2022, it was extremely busy. Money was cheap. Let's be honest, interest rates were cheap. Money was cheap. And organizations were building out their capabilities. In 22, I don't know if I heard some things about artificial intelligence, but certainly not like you do now in the last year. My goodness.
You used to say AI with quotation mark.
Yes.
So it was like people.
Yeah, ChatGPT was just out and people were still playing with it, wondering what the capabilities would be in the future. But on a macro level, 2023, it's like you're in a school bus and someone hit the brakes and we all went flying and hit the seat in front of us, right? What we've seen, at least from our chairs, is that hiring really slowed down and those layoffs. There are over 50,000 tech layoffs, and I think that's underreported, to be honest with you. I think there were more than that. But there were 50,000 plus tech layoffs in 2023, and we certainly saw that. We had Fortune 500 companies in 2022, towards the end of 2022, asking us, we've got these initiatives, we need to hire 20 people, you need to help build us out our capabilities in this department. We had multiple of those, and literally overnight, that went away. Get into 2023, and that dried up real quick. They called back, said, we're not moving forward with those initiatives. Thanks, but no thanks. And from our end, we've seen pockets of opportunity here and there, but really nothing like what we saw in 2022. And coming into 2024, it's been very similar to 2023. That pace has not picked up. We just joked about this earlier today. One of my biggest frustrations is people, what do you do? I'm in cybersecurity recruiting. They go, oh, you must be killing it. Like, no, we're not. Because in 2023, business slowed way down. And then that hasn't changed in 2024.
But
so now
it's
on the
all,
sorry,
it's
go
all
ahead.
but I just want to just double click on something.
Yep.
So it's all comparable, right? So people, for example, if you take an example of the interest rate right now, right? So interest rate are whatever, to buy a house, 7%.
7. Yep.
Yeah, whatever. So yeah, it sounds like double from what it was, but it was from 3%. But if you look at the overall 50 past years, it was like 15 or something on average. So I think I would say that there's a certain baseline for cybersecurity recruitment that potentially we overshot at some point, and then we undershot at some point. Where do you think this industry is going from these levels?
Oh man, if I knew that. So that's a great question. So I talked to a couple other firms that are in the same space that we're in. We're part of the MRI network. So there's 400 offices, and several of those are also in cybersecurity, in different areas of cybersecurity. So one's in sales. That's the one I talk to the most often. And he thinks he's seen an uptick. So he thinks we're going to start to see hiring like literally disappeared. And by the way, I'm part of HireQuest too. HireQuest is the parent company of MRI. Anyway, HireQuest looks at the trends.
Alf, just for people not familiar with the MRI network, talk to me about that, just so.
Sure.
What is it?
Management Recruiters International has been around for, since the 70s. So it's a franchise model of roughly about, I think we're up to about 431 offices, something like that at this point. And each office can pick what niche they want to go into. So basically it's a recruiting firm in a box, right? So here's your tools, pick what niche you want to go into, go forth and conquer. That's what the MRI network has been traditionally, and it's an executive search function. So it has been that since, like I said, in the 70s when Alan Schoenberg started MRI. So MRI has been purchased several times by several different owners. Finally, we just were recently purchased by HireQuest. I think it'll probably be one of the last purchases. I say that because HireQuest is a much more stable brand, been around much longer, publicly traded company than our previous owners, which is great to have that stability. We really like being part of the HireQuest family. HireQuest and Snelling, those organizations do more like your temporary staffing. So on a construction site, we need somebody to sweep up and clean up the area. Okay, we need 30 of those people that can work for the next 3 weeks. And what Snelling and HireQuest is really good at. MRI allows them to get into the executive search space. And so that's what those 400 plus offices do. So anyway, that's MRI in a nutshell.
Okay. And then I ask you the question about specifically, where's the baseline for the cybersecurity recruitment?
Yeah. So I think what happened is during the pandemic, we had some money was cheap. We had a lot of initiatives. So hiring was on a hockey stick going up. And then we hit the brakes 2023. There's the layoffs. I think organizations had too much fat. They cut the fat. And then what happens after that is then hopefully what we're going to see is that gradual rise now. And I think that's where we were on the bottom, and now we're going to see that gradual rise where, okay, we've defined what we need. All right, we're going to do zero trust. That's one of our initiatives, right? Or we need a better identity and access management solution. Or we're going to have a platform that we've got all these different security tools that we utilize within our organization. We want one platform that has artificial intelligence baked into it that can then consolidate all that data so we have better data that we're operating on. We're going to need specialists to do that. That's where we can utilize cybersecurity recruiters, right? So I think that's where we are. I think those opportunities are going to start to open up. Cloud security, those types of positions. So I think we're going to see a gradual rise. I don't think we're going to see the crazy hiring that we saw when the money was dirt cheap. I think people are being a little more frugal with their spend now than they were 2 years ago when I had 0% interest rate and I could borrow to hire.
And so in this environment, if you are a candidate, either have a position or currently looking, what is your recommendation as somebody who's, again, as a professional, as I mentioned to you, like you have the pulse on the market?
Mm-hmm.
What can they do to be more attractive, have better position themselves to get hired, and once they get an opportunity to make sure that they maximize their chances to get hired?
Yeah. First of all, update your information on LinkedIn and your resume. So that's number one. A lot of times I look at LinkedIn profiles. I'm looking at jobs that they held 5 years ago. I'm like, what have they done for the last 5 years? How come that's not in there? I can't see that. I don't see those skill sets. Also, you have to know how recruiters work, okay? Not just external recruiters, but internal recruiters as well. How do they find people? They find people through keywords, right? So if I'm looking for a Splunk specialist, you better dang well have Splunk somewhere on your resume or I'm not going to look at you, right? So make sure you have that information that's updated on your LinkedIn profile and your resume. That's number one. Number two, if you want to make yourself more attractive, obviously you want to work your network. So grow your network that you have, both LinkedIn, whatever other tools, your tools of choice that you're going to utilize. Third, utilize people like us. Say, hey, Al, I'm interested. I'm looking for an opportunity. Just want to let you know this is the type of position I'm looking for. But the more specific you are, David, the better it is. I'm looking for this industry, right? If you tell me the industry you're looking in, you tell me what you're really good at, the value that you bring to the table. Okay, now we're cooking with gas, right? Because now I can go look in that industry and go, oh, hey, we've worked with a couple of really good companies in the industry. Let me reach out to my hiring manager, find out if they're interested in someone with your background, and I can get you to work all the way around that HR process that you hate, sending your resume in and then you don't hear anything. I can get you right to the hiring manager, which is, by the way, another huge value of working with somebody like us. We're going to have connections at the hiring manager level, and you can get right to the person who's making that decision and get your information in front of them as long as you're the right fit.
And it takes time to get proficient in the skill set, maybe certifications, maybe the experience and so on. How would you, if you had a crystal ball or you had the ability to choose, what would be most attractive? You mentioned some tools and some disciplines, but if you're a security professional and you're looking to say, okay, I want to double my income, or I want to be more successful in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about the Wayne Gretzky thing. Like, what would you focus on right now from a skill set and capabilities perspective?
Yeah, there's always going to be pockets or areas of need where there's a shortage. So cloud security, right? That's been a hot one for a while. Or I'm a Splunk specialist, right? There's nothing. You can't go wrong with becoming an expert in a tool that's in demand. That's a tool that's in demand. And I just use Splunk as an example. There's several others, right? but you can't go wrong if you become an expert in that space or in that area. Learn as much as you can. There's so much information out there right now on YouTube and everything else. You can learn a lot. And not only that, but if you're working in that space, even better, right? So that's number one. But number two, I think, David, the intersection of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cybersecurity. If you can start getting knowledge in how AI is going to impact cybersecurity in the future, and how I just read an article on, I got to look at the word here, platformization, where you have all these tools. I referenced it a little bit earlier, but you have all these tools. Okay. And each one of those tools has these data that's within those tools. How do you unlock that? How does one single platform that has artificial intelligence baked into that, how does that find the data within the tools and then make sense of that data for the organization so they can take action on it? If I'm a cybersecurity professional, that's really interesting to me. I'm like, how is artificial intelligence, machine learning going to impact not only my job, but if I learn this area, if I become an expert in this area, I'm going to bring a lot of value to an organization, because people are going that direction. And organizations are going to be, how can we utilize that to make our system smarter, right? So it can respond to threats quicker and be smarter in how it responds to those threats. That's how AI is going to get used within cybersecurity. So if I could become that expert, I think you're going to bring a lot of value to the marketplace in the next decade.
So maybe not the purple squirrel that we were talking about, but
that's not purple squirrel.
No, I know, but
No.
Getting to be an expert in a certain field.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful that whatever technology you're becoming proficient is not going to be sunset.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like Python or something.
Yeah.
Although Python's still being used.
Even though I would say that, for example, and we're going on a tangent here, that like COBOL, for example.
Yeah.
It's such an old programming language, but people that are proficient, because there's none. Everybody retired, the people that were doing COBOL. So now if you're a COBOL specialist or know this, you can make quite a decent living off that, because there's still mainframe system that utilize this.
Yeah.
So it's
I had some funny, I just got to tell you the story.
Go ahead.
I had a couple of funny job orders where the company would call me and say, we've got a system that runs on Cobalt or whatever, and there's this guy that he won't let go. He's the only one that knows all this stuff around because he's built the whole platform for us. He's the only one that can you bring somebody in that can learn from this guy? Because if he dies, we're screwed. I was like, how am I going to find who's going to work with this guy who won't share anything with anybody? Oh, this is a great job order. I'm really excited to work on this one. That hasn't happened in a long time, but it just made me think of it when you brought that up.
Yeah, for sure. And it's real life examples, right? We're talking about real life situation here, maybe shadowing. You just have to befriend them until the point where they open up the kimono to what it is that they're doing.
Yes.
So let me wrap up with one last question that you probably have insight. What would you say is the most important trait for individuals to be successful in the field of cybersecurity?
Learn to listen. Learn to listen more, talk less. That's something I'm working on all the time. But be eager to learn. Be eager to learn what's changing in the space. As you had referenced earlier, David, things are changing so rapidly, not just within information technology, but within cybersecurity. I've seen trends like you wouldn't believe come and go in the last decade, and that's not going to slow down. That's going to accelerate. So be eager to learn, be flexible. We just talked about not pigeonholing yourself into a single technology, right? And be willing to learn from others that are spearheading the space. A friend of mine, Matthew Winter, I had to think about his last name. Anyway, Matthew Winter, he's a cybersecurity engineer by trade, right? But Matthew Winter, what he's doing right now is he's on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, learning all about artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact cybersecurity. Guess what? He's being asked to speak. He's being brought in front of his company saying, what should we be doing in this area? So that wasn't in his job description, right? He just took it on because he was fascinated by it and interested in it. We need more people like that. If you want to become valuable to your organization, do what he's doing.
And do you ever continue dating your clients after they get a job? Do you have friends that your circle of friends that you place for so many years at different positions, and you become personal friends?
Oh yeah. Especially more so though, yes is the answer to that question, but more so so before I did cybersecurity, I did radiology staffing within hospitals. And you work with those directors every single day. You were talking to them because their turnover was fairly high. So you work with them all the time. So in that space, I have lifelong friends that we became friends with because we were talking all the time, and you'd fly out there and you'd wine them and dine them and you'd buy them dinner and whatnot. But in this space, it's a little more sterile than that space. I would say if we're trying to incorporate that more into the business model. For a long time, it was just your tail feathers are on fire and try to put them out as quickly as possible and run from this fire to that fire and put all the various fires. But now that things have slowed down a little bit, we want to get back to that relationship business model. My partner and I have talked about that quite a bit, is that's important, that we're going to have to get out and be more face-to-face than we have been in the past. And it's funny, David, that here we have all this technology and Microsoft Teams and all these things, but really business still comes down to doing business with somebody one-on-one that you trust, that you like, that you want to do business with. That hasn't changed. And that's, by the way, that would be the last piece of advice that I would give to candidates/professionals in this space. The relationship piece of this business has not changed. Don't get so buried in the tech that you don't still create relationships within the space. It's still extremely important to get out, go to those conferences, meet people, get to know people, become friends.
Yeah. Don't forget the human element into
Exactly
cyber piece.
correct. Yeah.
So I was about to ask you about what's the easiest way to get in touch with you to get you a contract and something. But before that, I don't know if you also play the guitar. I see the guitar in the back. I don't know if you would have busted a tune, or we'll keep that for the next episode. What's your favorite music?
I don't think you want to hear that.
What's your favorite? Listen, we're here for cybersecurity recruitment. We don't necessarily want you to get the next rock and roll or the next music gig.
Yeah.
What do you play?
So I got into guitar about 5 or 6 years ago and just loved the instrument, bought several. And it's funny, I had to buy 10 to figure out that there's really 1 or 2 that I just enjoy playing, sell the other. I would assume that a lot of other people have gone through that process. You got to find your sound, right? But anyway, so the most recent tune I'm working on is Nancy Sinatra's "These Boots Are Made for Walking." So that's a fun one to play.
You'll have to record that for me professionally, and maybe we'll add it to the intro and outro of this episode.
Yeah. I would caution.
Listen, it's amazing. With AI, we can make everything sounds fast.
That's right. I never even thought of that. I haven't tried that yet.
So we just need the basic tunes.
Yeah.
So what's the easiest way, Al, to reach out to you?
Sorry about that. Easiest way would definitely be the website. So cybersecurityrecruiters.com. And then you can certainly call our phone number, 763-515-0088. And those are probably 2 best ways. And then LinkedIn is how you found me. LinkedIn, Absolutely. Of course. I'm on LinkedIn every day. That's if you want to get my attention right away, send me a note on LinkedIn. I'll see it.
Awesome. It's been a very beneficial conversation. I personally learned a lot. It was amazing. I enjoyed it as well. Looking forward to seeing where you go from here. And maybe we'll do a recap at some point, talk about some current events. And I would also maybe like to dissect a position. We'll go out there and we'll pick a couple positions we walk through. Again, this is part of giving back to the community, helping individuals both individuals and the clients as well, to figure things out and make the match easier. But until then, thank you very much for joining. Thanks to all who joined and endured this conversation, and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. And
thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much.
Stay safe online as well as offline. I'll see you soon.